In a time and age where the prospect of a third world war is looming in the back of our minds, there's another war which is being fought by brave warriors in the internet. This war is about what is the healthiest and best diet for longevity. And here we have very different sides which are crucifying one another, saying that the other side is completely out of their minds. Sometimes it is extremely hard to understand what is rage bait or not. In this video I will try to give you a general overview of the landscape of these different sides, and I will try to offer a peace proposal in order for us to hash this conflict aside and to improve communication lines between every one of these sides. So various clans have gathered and are continuously launching offensive maneuvers at one another. There is the Carnivore clan, which states that red meat reigns supreme. Here you have the OGs that just stick to red meat, salt and water, and within that you have some variations, just like within Christianity, where you have the Catholics, the Protestants, the Eastern Orthodox, and the Anglicans. In the Carnivore case, you can say that some of these variations claim that fruit is okay, that milk is okay, but only if it is in the raw form. I don't know if this is just being done to trigger Louis Pasteur or to just increase your probability of acquiring some ailments that haunted people before pasteurization was developed. I mean, overall, I just don't get the raw milk appeal, but maybe I'm just crazy. And don't you dare show these people a broccoli or some other vegetable. Within this, there are some individuals that I can't classify as a tribe because I believe and hope that there are too few that say that fermented, well, let me rephrase that, rotten, decaying meat is the best. Salmonella, E. coli, and other nasty variants are actually good, but we have been brainwashed into believing that they're bad. So we are under the nocebo effect. Moving on, we have the low carb and keto gang, in which I must say that I belong. Not because I think it is the best diet, but because I think it is the best one for me that is more beneficial at this current moment in time. It doesn't mean that I will always belong to this group, but currently I think it is the diet that suits me best for my goals. I'll explain this better later on. Basically, we eat a lot of fat from olive oil and avocados and stuff, and are extremely scared of carbs. Even just saying the word carbohydrate freaks me out. You also have the vegans, raw vegans, and within this you have the fruitarians who just eat and drink fruit. If you ask me, that specific version is a nutritional deficiency speedrun diet. You have the vegetarians who couldn't fully commit to the vegan cause, so they reached a compromise. In the periphery, you also have tribes that go against seed oils. They say that seed oils create all sorts of issues, from inflammation to cancer and other things. And they say that seed oils are obviously bad because if you look at how they are produced, they just look nasty. And the thing here is that the aesthetic of production methods of food is not really a good proxy for whether something is healthy or not. Most food production looks really nasty, so I don't know if this is a good metric. Additionally, there is not much or any significant literature that points to its harmful effects, so we don't really have data proving that seed oils are actually that bad or bad. Some will claim that the studies that report negative effects have been suppressed, or those that show beneficial ones have been bought out. I don't really care, as I'm more of an olive oil kind of guy, of course, because I'm from Portugal, but be careful when saying that all or most studies are corrupt, except those that you like or go in favor of your beliefs. Once again, extraordinary claims equals extraordinary evidence. If you want to be skeptical, at least be consistent. Then you have the vocabulary gang that says that complicated words means that a food type is bad or dangerous. The multivitamin cooperative that claims that taking over 20 supplements or vitamins is the way to go. That's more or less the different sides that are implicated in this war. There might be subgroups or groups that I haven't mentioned, but I think this is a good general overview of the different sides in this battle. All of these clans, assuming that their leaders aren't just trying to spew nonsense or contribute to rage bait, have one common intention, which is they want to figure out what is the healthiest diet, and they want to communicate it to other people in order to help them live a better life. That in itself is a commendable action. You can say that it isn't being done in a correct way, or that it can be harmful because there's this very dogmatic approach to a specific diet, claiming that this diet will solve everything, or that this diet is the best diet for everyone who's currently living. But I think we can start from this commonality, which is people are trying to find the best way to live, and then they're excited to communicate that to other people. But I think that the biggest problem that is going on here is that people are focusing on diet types instead of principles of nutrition. What I mean by this is that if you focus on defending a specific diet, you become dogmatic and rigid. But if you focus on the principles of nutrition, you're able to generate new ideas and have more freedom to actually engage in these types of conversations. And what I mean by principles is understanding what it is that makes a certain diet conducive to health. I'll discuss this in more detail later on. Additionally, another mistake that people are making is assuming that one diet is best for everyone. So they get into these wars saying, oh no, the carnivore diet is the best, or the Mediterranean diet is the best, or whatever. But they forget that we need a personalized approach. Some diets are better for some people because people might have different goals. So let's say that you are trying to reduce insulin resistance or you're a type 2 diabetic. If you're trying to optimize those markers, maybe going on a low carb, keto diet, or going on any diet whose ingredients and foods are very low in a glycemic index are probably the best diet for you. If you're trying to optimize muscle growth and, just athletic performance, maybe going on a high protein diet with adequate amounts of carbs, and sometimes that can be even a relatively high amount of carbs, might be ideal for you. So you can see immediately that there's a problem there. How can you say that one diet is the best for everyone if people have different goals and needs? It simply doesn't work that way. So if we go back to building up these principles, we need to use some data from nutritional science. We need to use some, common accepted facts about nutrition that we can then use to build up our principles. And I know that this is a very tricky aspect because, as you know, the nutritional science field is completely changing their perspectives like many other fields. But I think in nutrition, it is just crazy how much things can change from one moment to another. And that's, once again, a very important principle, which is don't get too dogmatic, because the beliefs that you have or the ideas that you have might very well in the future be proven to be wrong. But if we try to focus on some things that most of us can agree on, we can say that reducing the amount of added sugars in our diet is highly beneficial. I think everyone can agree on that. That avoiding sugar substitutes is also something that can be beneficial. That although they don't seem to cause the same sugar spikes as traditional sugars, there is some data pointing, and of course this is still speculative, but pointing that long-term consumption of these types of sugar substitutes can also lead to insulin resistance and other issues. I think we can also agree that we should reduce processed foods as much as we can. And here we need to be a little bit careful with our definitions, because most things that we eat are processed in some way or another, but I guess it really depends on what type of processing is being done. If it's just physical processing, then it's one thing. If it's chemical processing, where you are actually changing the chemical nature of the food that you are consuming, then perhaps that is more tricky, although that isn't by itself an indication that that food is actually harmful for you. Something else that we can agree on is that probably the most important macronutrient is protein. And in this case, we need diets which have sufficient amounts of protein. And here an accepted range would be 1.6 to 2.2 for males and 0.8 to 1.6 for women, although that range can actually be higher, and also for males. I mean, there are some studies showing that 2.6 grams per kilogram for males can actually be better for muscle growth, although there is some discussion regarding that. In case of women, when they are in the luteal phase, protein intake becomes more important, so maybe you can bump that up to maybe a 1.7 or a 1.8 grams per kilogram. But basically, the key idea here is that you need to have a diet which has a sufficient amount of protein, and that protein amount needs to be fine-tuned depending on your demands, the demands that you put in your body. So if you're someone who engages in a lot of movement or physical activity, then more caution and more fine-tuning is needed. Another principle, although this one may be more disputed, is that we need to consider fat intake. So we don't want to consume excessive fat, not only because fat is extremely caloric, 9 calories per gram, but also because we have some studies pointing out that excessive fat intake can result in cardiovascular issues down the line. Here I fully understand that there's a lot of debate regarding this. We have studies comparing keto diets and other types of diets such as Mediterranean diets. As you know, the keto diet is very high in fat, and some studies have pointed out that in terms of cardiovascular risk, these two diets don't really seem to have much of a difference. So there is a lot of debate, but mechanistically we can somewhat agree that we should manage our fat intake. Something else that we can agree is that it is important to replenish with electrolytes, especially after physical activity, where we experience some electrolyte depletion. And we know that just drinking water is not good enough, may not be a sufficiently good tool for hydration. So just incorporating some electrolytes in your water can also be something that is fairly much agreed upon and optimal. Avoiding high calorie surpluses is also something that most of us should agree on, right? So if you're consuming too much of a calorie surplus, you're going to have gain weight. Depending on that surplus, you might be gaining a lot of fat. And as we know, when we get to certain body fat percentages, our risk for having diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and many other things increases. So taking this into consideration, and so avoiding too much of this energy balance is most of the times the best way to go. But now get ready, because this is the main principle here. And the main principle here is that your diet should be fine-tuned using blood work that can detect possible deficiencies, that can give you an indication of your metabolic health. And based on that, you can see what diets are better for you or not. By doing this, you can also detect food intolerances and allergies, although I understand that some of the tests being used to detect those aren't that accurate, but at least they give you some insight on things that can help you optimize and customize your diet. The main point is that your diet should be a product of what goals you want to achieve and of the life you want to live. It should really depend on that. And to do so, to create a diet which is best for you, you need to use the biopsychosocial model, where you integrate biological, psychological, and social aspects into creating your own diet. So hopefully you found that this video was useful and that this video can somewhat bring a little tiny element of peace and hope to this war, to this world war of diet that is going on in the internet across all platforms. And so let me know if you disagree or agree with what I said, and stay tuned for more videos.